Hey guys, tonight we're going way back, like pre-Instagram foodie era, back to a time when butter wasn't just a topping, it was a social statement, a colonial currency of sorts, a squishy, melty, mildly smelly cornerstone of early breakfast diplomacy. Imagine it's a damp evening, rain tapping on wooden shutters. You're wrapped in a blanket that's been used one too many times but still smells like old linen and tea. Outside, the wind creaks against timber walls, and in the kitchen there's that smell. Buttery, earthy, slightly sour. You can't tell if it's dinner or if something has gone terribly, terribly colonial. Either way, you're already in too deep. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into a kitchen that isn't yours. There's a fire pit in the middle, a pot of something bubbling, not boiling, not simmering, just waiting. In the corner, a barrel sealed with pitch and roped tight. Inside it, the first butter ever churned in this colony. It's not pretty. It's grayish, weirdly translucent, and smells like wet socks after a long church service. You reach out cautiously and tap the lid. No one notices. The fire pops. A chair creaks behind you. You don't turn around. You're here to learn and possibly to regret. The butter was made by a woman named Eliza Sparrow. Not a pirate. Just a widow with extremely strong forearms and a deep belief that milk could be punished into greatness. Churning took her 3 hours a day, every morning. And she sang to the cream. This part is true. Weird little ditties like curdle and fold, thou tempest so bold. Give me a pat for breakfast and gold. We're not sure if that was magic or mental illness, but somehow it worked. Eliza's butter became popular, mainly because she added salt. Everyone else forgot that part. You sneak a small taste. It's okay. Cold, heavy, slightly woolly, like it absorbed the texture of the towel it was wrapped in. But better than eating dried apples dipped in sadness, which was the other option on the table. This butter, though, it had power. It wasn't just for bread. People traded for it. Despite a ladle of Eliza's salted blend could get you a sack of barley, 2 fence posts, or, legend has it, a goat with only mild aggression. But not everyone liked it. Reverend Pritchard declared butter a temptation of the tongue, which is hilarious, because he was caught hoarding it in his cellar during a mouse infestation. You wander out of the kitchen and into the pantry. The smell follows you. It's lodged in your nose now, salty, sour, strangely cozy, like ancestral cheese breath. You find a little journal on a shelf bound in twine, pages stiff with age and possibly grease. Inside, notes from early settlers, open quote, July 14th, Eliza's butter was thin today, mood foul, milk rebellious. August 2nd, used butter as poultice. Uncle Thomas stopped coughing, or maybe stopped breathing, close quote. And this one, open quote, September 9th, ate butter alone by candlelight, cried a bit, still good, close quote. You sit there, surrounded by pickled things and ghostly grocery lists, and wonder, who was the first person to spread butter on stale bread and say, this is it, this is civilization? Some historians still debate whether the butter we know today truly started in Eliza's hands, or it came from Dutch sailors who accidentally left a barrel of cream on deck too long. Either way, you're here now, stuck in a sleepy, savory pocket of time. You step back out into the night. The wind has picked up, a howling kind of whisper that smells faintly like old firewood and dairy. You hold your shawl tighter. In the distance, a churn creaks rhythmically. Someone's still at it. And you're already starting to dream in yellow. You wake up, or maybe you never fully slept, in a low-ceilinged cottage where the light leaks through warped glass like it's embarrassed to be seen. There's a foggy smell outside, wet hay and sheep breath, but in here the air is sharper. Freshly disturbed soil, damp roots, and something you can't quite place. Green, herbal, almost like soap. You follow it, past an uneven floorboard that groans under your left heel. Light past the windowsill where a moth flaps lazily like it's been reading the same chapter for a week. And into a garden. It's not your garden. It belongs to the past. Rows of suspiciously spindly vegetables, a wooden fence leaning dramatically to the left, and in the corner, shaded and half forgotten, is the cilantro, or as the colonists called it then, that infernal weed. You crouch beside it. It's just leaves, fragile, feathery, soft as breath, but the scent, when you crush one leaf between your fingers is alarmingly vivid. A burst of brightness with something underneath, something chemical. It reminds you of shampoo and regret. They didn't like it. Not at first. The settlers were already overwhelmed by corn that looked like teeth and deer that stared too long. They didn't want a plant that smelled like betrayal. The first record of cilantro in the colonies was a single sentence scribbled on the margin of a seed ledger. Open quote, acquired seeds from Spaniard. Odor troublesome, possibly cursed. Close quote, you stifle a laugh. The past had such drama. The truth, cilantro came from far away. It rode ships tucked inside linen bags beside cloves and dried oranges. It snuck in among parsley like a prank. Some say it was brought intentionally, others claim it was a mistake. But the effect was the same. People were not ready. You wander further into the garden. A rusted shovel sticks out of the earth like a forgotten argument. A tangle of vines threatens to overtake an old bench. Someone, probably a teenager, carved W plus M plus cilantro equal no into the wood. There's a story there, but we'll never know it. You find a kitchen window slightly open and drift back inside. A woman is slicing root vegetables, her hands calloused, her sleeves rolled high. You recognize her from a portrait in the church. Martha Brigg, accused twice of witchcraft and once of aggressive cooking. She's muttering under her breath, scowling at a recipe. 3 sprigs, no more, and chop it fine so it doesn't speak. You lean in. Is she joking? Or does she really think cilantro talks? Turns out she's not alone. There were whispers, literal ones, that the plant hummed at night, that it grew faster when ignored. One boy claimed it gave him dreams of floating above the fields. Another said it made his teeth itch. The church was not amused. Sermons were held, warnings were issued. One particularly passionate deacon described cilantro as a gateway herb which would have made a great t-shirt if they'd had cotton printing. But then came the illness. Midsummer. A fever swept the village. Nothing helped. Until quietly, someone brewed a tea from the forbidden herb, and the coughing stopped. Or, at least, it slowed. The record of this moment is faint, just a line in a housewife's diary. Open quote. The green leaves calmed the boy. He slept, close quote. They never admitted it publicly, that cilantro had helped, but the plant was no longer pulled up or burned. It was allowed to grow, quietly in corners and shadows beneath louder vegetables. You stand now in a pantry with jars, brown glass, beeswax sealed. One of them is labeled Plungent Sprigs. You open it. The scent rushes out like it's been waiting centuries. You close it quickly. Some smells are too honest. Historians still argue over whether cilantro was accepted or merely tolerated, whether it was used for healing or just flavor, whether the people who claimed it whispered at night were lying, or not, entirely wrong. You step back into the cool garden. A breeze lifts your hair. The cilantro plants shiver, though the air is still. In the distance, a bell tolls. Maybe for dinner, maybe for something else, and you swear you hear a leaf sigh. You're back inside now. The floor beneath your feet is sticky in places. Dried sap, perhaps, or the kind of mystery that builds up over time in kitchens that try too hard. There's a churn in the corner, tall, wooden, cylindrical, with a handle that looks like it's been spun by 1,000 anxious hands. You don't really want to go near it, but you do. Your fingers wrap around the handle. It's warm, not from heat, but from use. It creaks when you push, as though the wood remembers being a tree and deeply resents its new career in dairy. This is where it happened. The third butter experiment. You see, before Eliza Sparrow became the accidental monarch of colonial dairy, there was a moment, a short, horrifying moment, when butter went wrong. Not just wrong, profoundly unsettling. You crouch down. There are old papers tucked beneath the churn. You unfold one carefully. It's a recipe sort of written in the looby. Determined handwriting of someone who's about to make a terrible decision. Open quote. For softer spread and novel tone, use juice of root not yet grown. Mix with milk of goat or sheep. Stir through night. Do not sleep. Close quote. You glance at the churn. It groans. According to the surviving record, mostly oral, mostly passed down by people who were kind of whispering and kind of laughing, this butter batch used turnip juice instead of salt water and goat's milk that had been left out during an eclipse. You don't need a culinary degree to know this is already a red flag. But they were desperate. There was a butter shortage that summer. Eliza had thrown out her pack, chasing a chicken named Hubert. No one else could churn properly. The Cows were stressed, people were butter-starved and borderline feral. Enter Silas Broom, tinker, amateur herbalist, and man with no formal training in dairy arts. He took it upon himself to fix the butter supply by inventing what he called butter nouveau. You find another page. Open quote. Smells of root cellar and possibility. Color pale but expressive. Texture uncertain. Close quote. You gag a little. It's involuntary. The first person to taste butter nouveau was a man named Jebediah Garth. He said nothing for 5 minutes, then tried to climb into a water barrel and refused to come out for the rest of the day. The second person was the town's midwife. She declared the butter possessed and buried her spoon in the woods. It was never found again. You move away from the churn. There's a low shelf with jars of attempts, labeled with delicate calligraphy, as if that would help. Batch 3A, less screaming smell. Batch 3B, more air. Batch 3C, possibly alive. You don't open them. You're not that curious. It's funny, colonial history always talks about tea taxes and land treaties, but no one tells you about the month when people avoided toast altogether. When butter was whispered about like a plague. When one child reportedly tried to trade a frog for a single pad of the old salted stuff. That child, he's probably your great-great-great-granduncle. You can feel it in your bones. Silas Broom was eventually banned from anything churn-related. His final contribution to the town, a note scratched into the side of the church pew. Open quote, let not man meddle with milk beyond reason. Close quote. Some historians say butter nouveau was a necessary step in the evolution of modern spreads. Others say Silas was just bored and needed a nap. You step away from the memories and the smell of past dairy failures. The churn creaks again, as if trying to get your attention. You don't look back. Outside, the clouds have shifted. The air is cooler. Someone's baking something. It might contain butter, the good kind. You breathe in tentatively, and you don't trust it yet. But you're hopeful. The rain has stopped, but the air is still holding its breath. You walk slowly now, your shoes muffled against the damp earth and old wood, heading toward the edge of the settlement where the houses get smaller, the walls thinner, and the rules, if they ever mattered, feel more like polite suggestions. There's a house here, gray shingles, a crooked chimney that looks like it's trying to lean away from the past, and a kitchen with no curtains, because the woman who lives inside doesn't believe in hiding anything, especially not for cooking. Her name is Anke van Meer. She came from the Low Countries with 3 spoons, 2 goats, and a personality made entirely of elbows and opinions. You watch her through the window. She's wearing her apron backwards and muttering loudly in Dutch, maybe also in frustration. On her table, a wooden bowl of butter, salted, soft, barely yellow. Next to it, a pile of freshly chopped cilantro. You know where this is going. You step inside. She doesn't see you, or maybe she does and simply doesn't care. She's too busy performing the act that would divide dinner tables for centuries. Anke takes a spoonful of butter, smooths it over a piece of flatbread, then slowly, deliberately sprinkles cilantro on top. And just like that, you're witnessing history, or heresy, or possibly lunch. No one else had dared to do it before. Butter was sacred. Cilantro was suspicious. But Anke, she saw an empty plate and thought, this could use chaos. You sit quietly as she eats it, chews, pauses, eats more, and says to absolutely no one, open quote, could be worse. Close quote. That was the review that launched a revolution. Of course, when word got out, the reaction was not polite. The town blacksmith declared it culinary vandalism. A letter was sent to the governor. There were murmurs that Anke had been corrupted by foreign herbs. But then came the copycats. You walk past another house a few days later. Same smell. Butter, cilantro, cracked pepper if you're feeling risky. The recipes spread faster than anyone expected, mostly because no one wanted to admit they liked it, but no one stopped making it either. Anke, meanwhile, had moved on. She was already testing other combinations. Butter with pickled radish, butter with dried plums, butter with fermented eel paste. You respect her ambition, but silently pray she'll stop. Somewhere in all this, someone asked, why does it work? No one really knew. Butter is soft, warm, comforting. Cilantro is sharp, cool, electric. Together, they're a surprise that tastes like forgetting rules. It's like your mouth is trying to read poetry and chew at the same time. One local doctor claimed the combination improved mood and digestion. Another said it gave him dreams about green horses. You try not to read too much into either. You flip through a ledger on a shelf. It lists butter recipes and their emotional consequences. Butter with dill, mild satisfaction. Butter with mint, regret. Butter with cilantro, confusion followed by acceptance. Anki was never honored for her discovery. She didn't want a plaque. She wanted more spoons, preferably wooden, preferably clean. Some historians argue that this moment, the cilantro butter incident, was the start of colonial fusion cuisine. Others insist it was a desperate act by a hungry woman tired of bland bread. You leave the house quietly. The wind is picked up again. It carries the scent of herbs and cream and something unnameable, something old, something delicious. You don't know yet. You'll try it later, when no one's looking. Then you start to wonder what else shouldn't work, but might. The morning comes with a squelch. You're wading through the mud behind the livestock pens, shoes sinking into the kind of earth that's been overused, underappreciated, and trampled by at least 14 different species of hooved animals. Somewhere nearby, a rooster screams like he just remembered taxes exist. But you're not here for the rooster. You're here for the incident, the one that lives in whispered tales and offhand remarks in old family Bibles. The day the butter made the chicken stop laying. It's not an exaggeration. It's a very specific, very strange chapter in colonial agriculture, and you're standing right in the middle of it. You approach the coop. It's quiet, too quiet. Inside, the hens are perched but alert, staring into space with a blank expression of poultry who've seen something they cannot unsee. One of them blinks slowly like she's judging you. She is. The problem began, as many problems do, with an experiment. Not a good one. The village baker, a well-meaning man named Obadiah Finch, decided to add enhanced butter essence to his corn cakes. He didn't define what made the butter enhanced. The best guess is that he tried to ferment it, or maybe just forgot about it for a week. In the sun. Either way, the cakes smelled strong, like Butter's great uncle who wears too much cologne and talks about himself in the third person. Obadiah, oblivious, handed them out to everyone, including the man who fed the chickens. And well, chickens don't eat corn cakes. But the man did, and something about the smell lingered on him, in his clothes, his breath, his aura. The very next day, 0 eggs, not one. The chickens refused. Some just stared at the walls. One reportedly turned around in its nest and wouldn't make eye contact for a week. You peek inside the coop again. There's a sign, long faded, nailed above the door. Open quote, do not approach with butter, close quote. The butter was blamed instantly, of course. People had been looking for an excuse. Some claimed the smell confused the hens, others said it insulted them. There was even a theory that the butter had become sentient and issued psychic threats. It was a weird week. You find an old journal buried in the hay. A page sticks out. Open quote, March 12th, no eggs. Mood tense. March 13 gave them fresh feed, no change. March 14 burned the remaining cakes, slight clucking resumed. Close quote, they tried everything. Prayer, folk songs, changing the feed, apologizing directly to the chickens. Nothing worked. Until someone brought in a boy named Eli. 6 years old, honest eyes, a voice like wind on dry grass. He sat in the coop for 3 hours and hummed a lullaby about butter melting on pancakes. The next morning, 1 egg, then 2, then 10. The crisis passed, but the superstition stuck. Even now, you can feel it, the tension in the feathers, the collective memory of the birds. You whisper to one as you leave, just in case. I didn't bring any butter. Some historians say the egg shortage was seasonal. Others point to temperature fluctuations. But people here, they know, they remember. They don't eat corn cakes on Mondays, and they don't bring butter into the hen house. You walk away slowly, boots now crusted with the past, and something less poetic. The wind shifts, carrying a familiar scent, warm, fatty, a little sweet. Somewhere someone's frying eggs, and you kind of want to apologize to the chickens again, just to be safe. You find yourself standing in front of a low, crumbling building at the edge of town. Kind of structure that clearly didn't want to be a courthouse but was forced into it by society and some particularly insistent Puritans. The wood slats are warped. The sign above the door reads Town Hall and Storage of Unresolved Tensions. It creaks ominously, though it's not windy. Inside, it's dusty. The kind of dust that's not accidental. It's there on purpose. Protected, passive-aggressive. On a long wooden bench sits the accused, Cilantro. Okay, not literally. It's a bunch of cilantro wrapped in linen and tied with a blue ribbon, sitting in a basket like it's waiting to defend itself. You take a seat. You're the only one here. That doesn't stop the trial from proceeding. See, back in 1682, there was a real trial. One that no one really documented because, well, it was about herbs. But the oral histories remember. Whispers passed from aunt to nephew, from barkeeper to bored traveler. It all started with an incident during supper. A respected merchant named Zebian Huxley accused cilantro of ruining his stew. Not altering it, not adding character, ruining. He claimed it caused his tongue to go sharp and his dreams to become foreign. This alone wouldn't have been enough to bring the herb to court, but 3 other villagers backed him up the next day, saying cilantro made their food taste like soap touched by lies. One woman fainted, one man vomited preemptively, a boy reportedly began speaking Spanish. Naturally, cilantro was brought in for questioning. You turn a brittle page in an old docket book, finding the official charge. Open quote, let it be known that the herb in question is held accountable for confusion of the senses, disruption of familial taste, and sorcerous fragrance. Close quote. You blink. It's written in calligraphy. Someone took their time. A clergyman spoke for the prosecution. He claimed cilantro was a deceiver of tongues, and quoted scripture in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. The defense was less prepared. A cook named Greta tried to speak but fainted mid-sentence, possibly from nerves or poorly stored onions. The testimony was, I bit into stew and saw my dead uncle. It made my mouth feel like bees had manners. It's just parsley, but mean. The townspeople took it seriously, perhaps too seriously. The herb was banned from 3 taverns, all Sunday markets, and the town's only cookbook, hand-copied and full of passive-aggressive marginalia. But cilantro didn't care. It kept growing. Even when people yanked it up, burned it, or threw it into wells, it reappeared. On fence posts behind barns, between the pages of dusty recipe books, it's as if it knew it had been put on trial, and it had chosen not to attend. Some say the trial was actually about fear, of change, of foreign tastes, of the unknown wrapped in green. Others believe it was just a slow week and people needed something dramatic to yell about. You reach into the basket, pick up a sprig of cilantro. It's still fragrant, even after all this time. Bold, defiant, soap and lemon, and defiance all in one. As you leave the building, you notice a note etched into the doorframe. So faint, you almost miss it. It reads, open quote, tried, judged, eaten anyway. Close quote, the wind picks up, brushing the back of your neck. You swear it smells herbal. And you walk away from the courthouse thinking that maybe, just maybe, cilantro won that trial after all. The path out of town is uneven, stitched together from roots and regrets with little piles of discarded intentions in the form of cracked pottery and abandoned plans. You follow it anyway, drawn by a rumor you didn't mean to believe, that someone tried to make butter out of something that was absolutely, definitely not supposed to be butter. You reach a cottage that looks like it's being slowly absorbed by the surrounding forest. Ivy claws up its walls. Moss has claimed the roof, and the air around it smells like damp failure. This is where it happened. The 3rd butter attempt. The person responsible, a man named Erasmus Pike, a thinker, a fiddler, a man who once tried to build a self-churning butter barrel using chicken power. That didn't end well, but this was worse. You push open the door. It doesn't creak, it sighs like even the wood is tired of telling this story. Inside, the room is cluttered with objects that shouldn't exist. Spoons with holes in the wrong places, bowls that appear to have been melted on purpose, and a portrait of Erasmus himself, looking proud in the way only a man holding a turnip in one hand and a stick of chalk in the other can. You find the recipe nailed to the wall. It's written in large, frantic strokes. Open quote, butter 3.0, to be spread or feared. 2 parts goat's cream, soured. 1 part grated turnip. 1 dash something called root essence, unclear. Stir against the wind. Close quote. You pause. Stir against the wind. There's no way to confirm this, but oral tradition insists he mixed it all in a hollowed-out log during a lightning storm while chanting the phrase, emulsify or die. He was nothing if not dramatic. The result was not butter. It was closer to regret, in paste form. Villagers were invited to sample it at what was described as a butter unveiling, which is already an ominous phrase. Here are a few reactions preserved in the back of feels like a promise was broken. I tasted onion, sadness, and something that might have been bees. I think I know less now. You find a jar of it still preserved on a shelf, labeled batch 3C, caution, volatile. It's sealed tightly. You don't open it, you're not that curious. Not anymore. The aftermath was swift. Erasmus was politely but firmly asked to take a break from dairy experimentation. His tools were confiscated, his chickens refused to acknowledge him, but Erasmus wasn't deterred. He argued that true butter progress required boldness, vision, and a willingness to alienate your neighbors. He wrote a pamphlet titled, "We Can Churn Better Than This," but only 3 people read it, and 2 of them were confused about the title. Some historians claim this failed butter batch is what led to the founding of the Colonial Culinary Standards Board, CCSB, a short-lived organization whose only rule was, butter must come from cream. Please stop trying other things. You close the door gently behind you. The forest rustles as if laughing. As you walk back, the air clears. The scent of real butter floats in from somewhere. A bakery, maybe, or a home that never heard of Erasmus Pike. And you feel a little grateful for culinary boundaries, even if deep down you kind of admire the madness. The sun dips low now, casting long shadows over the village green where someone has set up tables with tablecloths that never quite lay flat. You can hear music in the distance. Slow fiddle notes that sound like a sigh held too long, and the occasional clink of tin cutlery colliding with wooden plates. It's the harvest celebration. You're expected to smile, nod, maybe clap at someone's pie. But tonight, something is different. You smell it before you see it. Butter, cilantro, and something else. Something that makes your stomach blink nervously. You follow the scent to a booth surrounded by silence. Not the kind of silence that invites calm, but the kind that's hovering over a group of people, frozen mid-bite. Forks in hand, eyes wide, jaws suspended in a liminal state of chew or eject. A sign in front of the booth reads, "Supper spread, buttered cilantro reduction with onion notes." You read it again, just to be sure someone wasn't trying to confess to a crime via recipe. Behind the table stands a proud teenager. Milo, you think his name is, wearing a too big apron, and the exact expression of someone who knows they've done something irreversible. You glance at a plate. A single toasted slice of stale colonial bread lies there, slathered with a green speckled glossy mixture that looks like melted candle wax after a stressful week. Someone's already bitten it and you swear you can hear their taste buds arguing. You sit beside the plate. You try to be brave. One bite, just one. It hits you in waves. First, the warmth of butter, familiar and safe. Then the fresh, grassy sharpness of cilantro, not entirely unwelcome. But then comes something else. A whisper of onion, maybe, but also a strange sweetness, like the butter's been left alone with its thoughts too long. It tastes like curiosity. It tastes like someone tried. It tastes like confusion in spreadable form. You blink. A man across the table whispers. Did it blink back? You don't answer. Milo beams at you. It's the first in a new series, he says, like he's pitching a butter-themed opera. I call it herb immediacy. You nod slowly as if he's just told you his butter is sentient. You look back at the plate. Other townsfolk are less forgiving. Someone mutters, "Abomination." The child bursts into tears. An old woman whispers, "This is how the plague starts." Milo shrugs. It's progressive. Later that night, the booth mysteriously disappears. No one admits to moving it. Someone finds a spoon stuck to a tree. Someone else claims to have seen the butter crawling. You wander toward the bonfire, trying to process what you've just eaten. You sip cider that tastes too honest and let the memory of the supper spread slide away like lukewarm gravy on a sloped plate. Historians rarely mention this dish, perhaps out of kindness or trauma. But there's one footnote in a recipe journal from 1684. Open quote. "A strange fusion tonight. Courageous if unwise. The butter wept. So did we." Close quote. You sit by the fire. A fiddler plays something soft and off-key. The moon is out now, watching politely. And you quietly vow never to eat anything called a reduction at a celebration again. It's early morning, and the frost has teeth. You can feel it in the tips of your fingers, gnawing gently through your gloves as you step outside. The world is stiff with silence. Every fence post has a beard of ice. The grass crunches like fragile secrets underfoot. You're heading to the storehouse, or what's left of it. Rumor has it the butter was left there overnight, unattended. crisis, except last night was the season's first true freeze. Inside the storehouse, the air is heavy with cold. The smell hits you immediately. Old milk, smoked wood, and the slow, patient death of optimism. There, on a wooden slab, sits the butter, or what used to be butter. It's no longer spreadable. It's no longer edible. It's a small, frosty boulder of dairy despair. A perfect cube of pale regret with little knife marks frozen mid-scrape. One side is cracked, revealing a grainy, icy interior that sparkles faintly like snow you shouldn't trust. Someone's written a sign next to it, open quote, "Do not attempt to thaw. Previous effort resulted in emotional collapse." Close quote. You touch it, instantly, your finger regrets everything. The butter is solid, offended. It has evolved from food to artifact, a time capsule of poor planning. You look around. There are attempts, little experiments in revival. A candle stub nearby, a scorched towel, a broken ladle, probably thrown in frustration, and scribbled notes, placed under armpit. No success. Sat on it, painful, still frozen. Sang lullaby, butter unresponsive. Eventually they gave up. Now it just sits there like a dairy monument. Some say it's good luck to touch it. Others swear their bread's never toasted right since they got too close. You step back. Slowly. The cold is deeper in here. The kind of cold that settles in your bones and makes you think about all the other things that have hardened when neglected. Relationships, ambitions, pudding. A boy walks in behind you, stares at the butter and whispers, "I heard it, remembers." Then walks out. You don't follow him. You're still watching it. A block of everything that could have been breakfast but now just isn't. Outside the sun is finally rising. The village begins to stir. Smoke curling from chimneys, chickens scratching nervously, someone shouting about a missing mitten. Life returning despite the frozen failure on the slab. Some historians claim the frozen butter incident marked a turning point in storage practices. Others believe it was just a Tuesday with poor judgment. But in the folklore of this town, that block of butter is still called the pat that refused. You walk away, hands deep in your coat, breath curling ahead of you like a nervous ghost. And you learned something today. Now, butter has limits, and so probably do you. You're walking uphill now, boots pressing into dry leaves and patches of lichen that squish slightly, like secrets trying to stay buried. There's a breeze, and with it comes an eerie quiet. Not silence, but the careful hush of something missing. You've been told the cilantro disappeared. All of it, overnight. You reach the garden, or what used to be one. Rows of turned soil, tidy once, now look like someone tried to erase the land with a fork. The other plants are still here, parsley, thyme, the occasional confused carrot. But cilantro, gone. Not wilted, not picked, gone. Even the roots have vanished, like it was never there at all. You bend down and sift through the dirt with gloved hands. There's a faint trace of scent. Not quite soap, not quite lemon. Like a ghost that washed its hands. You ask around. People won't meet your eye. The herbalist, who usually talks too much about everything, simply says, "It left." The baker mutters, "Didn't like the butter anymore." The mayor, who insists on being called magistrate despite no official appointment, claims it's because someone insulted the herb at a community supper and it took offense. All of them sound ridiculous. All of them might be right. Eventually, someone whispers the name Henry. You follow that whisper. Behind the meeting house, past a chicken coop with suspicious silence, is a small pen, and in it, a goat. Elderly, gruff, missing one horn. He stares at you with the deep, ancient disapproval of someone who has seen too much. His nameplate is nailed to the post. Henry. You look around. A few tufts of green cling to the fence. Cilantro, chewed short. You glance back at Henry. He doesn't blink. Witnesses say he began sneaking into gardens at night, nosing open gates, selecting only cilantro, ignoring every other herb. People thought it was charming at first, then the plants started vanishing completely. Entire rows, not just eaten, removed, dug up clean, roots and all, as if harvested by someone with delicate hooves and a grudge. One child claimed Henry carried a basket. You find a small pile behind the coop, stems neatly snapped, a folded cloth napkin stained with herb oil, a spoon, a tiny spoon. There's no proof, of course. Henry maintains eye contact like a seasoned criminal, but the cilantro is gone, and he's still here. You leave a note in the dirt. Open quote, "We miss the green, please return." Close quote. Some historians debate whether goats could be selective enough to target one herb with such consistency. Others argue this was less about botany and more about drama, but local legend calls it the Great Cilantro Heist. You walk back toward the road, the wind picks up, the distant bleat follows you, and you've started suspecting that herbivores might be more opinionated than we've been told. Church bell tolls in the distance, though not for a service. No one's died, not recently anyway, but something else is happening. You can feel it in the cobblestones, vibrating, slightly buttery. You follow the sound, past shuttered shops and soot-streaked chimneys, toward the chapel. Inside, the pews are full, but no one's praying. They're staring, eyes wide, mouths twitching, at the altar, where a large wooden stand has been placed. Atop it sits a butter sculpture. You step closer. It's hard to say what it is. A figure, maybe. Possibly a bird. Perhaps a man trying to be a bird. It gleams softly in the candlelight, salted and slightly melting. Someone coughs. A sign reads, open quote, the first annual consecration of the blessed butter. In cream we trust. Close quote. You sit in the back, quietly. The minister approaches the sculpture with a brass ladle and a deeply conflicted expression. He's reading from a thick, handmade text titled Epistles of Churn. You don't know whether to laugh or genuflect. He begins to preach. His voice is warm, but his eyes are asking for help. Open quote, let us honor the butter, that golden gift. From beast to barrel, from barrel to blessing, may it soften our hearts as it softens our bread. Close quote. You steal a glance at the person next to you. They're crying. It could be the sermon, it could be the scent. Behind the altar, a stained glass window depicts a cow glowing under moonlight. You're fairly certain it used to show a saint. This wasn't always a thing. The butter worship started small, just one thankful prayer over a particularly creamy batch. Then a hymn, then somehow a festival, a carving competition, a miracle. That's when things got complicated. Legend has it that someone once spread Eliza Sparrow's butter on moldy bread. It didn't get sick. That was all it took. Word spread faster than the butter itself. Soon people were leaving offerings, grain, honey, tiny wooden spoons, at the churn Eliza once used. A man claimed he saw the butter glow. A woman swore her toast smiled at her. And now, here you are, watching a man try to anoint a dairy sculpture without crying. Someone plays the organ. The notes echo weirdly, long and slightly wobbly, like they've been dipped in warm milk. At the end of the service, they pass around tiny pats of butter wrapped in linen. You're expected to take one. You do. It's cold in your palm, but soft at the edges, like hope or denial. You leave quietly. On the chapel door, someone's carved the phrase, open quote, thou shalt not spread without intention. Close quote. Outside, the air smells faintly of herbs and reverence. A few people linger, whispering about a second serve next week. Someone wonders aloud if the butter should be baptized. Some historians claim the cult of butter never happened, that it was exaggerated or invented by bored villagers. But you saw it, you tasted it, and you're not entirely sure what just happened, but part of you wants to go back for another pat. You wake to the sound of paper fluttering in the wind. A breeze has snuck in through the cracked shutters, gentle but insistent, like a librarian urging silence with a raised eyebrow. The air smells faintly of parchment, firewood, and green stems crushed underfoot. You sit up, the window overlooks the town square, and today, it's not filled with food or sermons or runaway goats. It's filled with poetry. Yes, poetry. About cilantro. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and make your way down to the gathering. A small wooden stage has been erected in the middle of the square, surrounded by folding stools and confused chickens. There's a sign painted hastily on burlap. Open quote, the first and possibly last Cilantro Verse Festival, let the herbs speak through rhyme. Close quote. You find a seat. The first poet is already at the podium. A boy of maybe 14 with hair like burnt straw and the confidence of someone who's only ever tasted bland soup. He clears his throat and begins, open quote, O leaf with scent both bright and mean, you haunt my bread, you stalk my bean, my mother weeps, my father gags, yet still you grow near chicken coops and flags. Close quote. There is silence. A woman claps once, then stops. The boy bows anyway. Next comes a tall man with a voice like wet wool and the emotional clarity of someone who hasn't exhaled in years. Open quote. In thee, cilantro, I see my ex-wife. Bold, sharp, uninvited to dinner twice. Close quote. Someone coughs. A child laughs. A chicken lays an egg on cue. Then comes her. You recognize her. Abigail Goodweather. The school teacher, the woman who once outlawed garlic from the lunchroom because it was too opinionated. She steps up to the stage with a sheaf of papers and the dramatic flair of a courtroom confession. She begins slowly, open quote, "They said the leaf was bitter, they said it caused unrest, but I saw it in the garden where the sun kissed it best. It whispered in the evening in languages I'd lost, and though it spoke of longing, it never asked the cost." Close quote. There's a pause, not from confusion, but respect. Someone gasps. An old man wipes a tear with a pickled napkin. The crowd claps louder this time. A murmur passes through them. For the first time you see it. Cilantro not as a curse, but as muse. You spot a table near the stage with handwritten zines. Cilantro, a love leaf. Soper Symphony, Leaves of Regret, a digestive journey. You flip through one. Inside are odes, limericks, even a sonnet that compares Cilantro to an unreturned library book. It's beautiful and slightly unsettling. Historians still argue whether the Cilantro Verse Festival was a breakthrough or a cry for help. One record notes that only half the town returned for the second day, and 2 poets mysteriously switched to parsley mid-reading. But for that one afternoon, Cilantro was not judged. It was understood. As the sun sets behind the steeple, casting long shadows across the verses taped to barrels and fences, the poets pack up. A stray dog sniffs at a line of haiku pinned to a cabbage cart. You walk home slowly, your mind full of green lines and soft rhymes. And you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the herb was never trying to be liked. Just listen to. The wind is louder today, a bit pushier, like it's trying to tell the village something, but no one's listening. You follow it, coat pulled tight, eyes squinting through the mist that's rolled in like a visitor without manners. You're heading to the edge of the orchard, now to a patch of ground where grass doesn't quite grow and where the air has a thick, waxy stillness. This is where they found it, or more accurately, where it found them. The butter jar. You approach the spot slowly. There's a flat stone half sunk into the earth, like a forgotten thought. On top of it sits a glass jar sealed with wax and twine, and covered in a film of dust that's been politely ignored for at least a decade. Someone once tried to bury it, maybe out of fear, maybe shame, maybe hope, but the jar kept resurfacing. You crouch beside it. You can hear something faint like a sigh. No, not from the wind. From the jar. The butter is breathing. You don't open it. Of course you don't. That's rule number 1 of colonial artifact butter. If it breathes, leave it alone. You reach into your pocket and pull out a worn note you found tucked behind the baker's ledger last week. Faded ink, too much punctuation. Open quote, "Do not disturb the jar. It remembers it was made in haste by candlelight under pressure. It is not regular butter. It is not food." Close quote. You sit on the stone for a moment, letting the chill settle into your knees. The orchard is quiet, too quiet for a place that used to echo with cider songs and rude jokes about apples. The story goes like this. During the butter crisis, which you'll remember from earlier around the time of the screaming chickens, someone, no one knows who, tried a new preservation method. They layered the butter with salt, herbs, vinegar, a few mint leaves, and something else. No one wrote it down. That was the first mistake. They sealed it tight in a glass jar, buried it in the orchard, left a note, open only when all other butter fails, and then forgot about it, until the frost shifted the soil one year, and the jar reemerged like it had something to say. The first person who opened it was a traveling tinker named Mahlon Reed. He claimed he heard it exhale. He closed it immediately. 3 days later, he moved to the coast and began collecting seashells for a living. Others came to see it. A few poked it. One person tried to write a song about it, but gave up halfway through the second verse, saying, "It changes keys when you're not looking." Now, the butter is mostly legend, but you're here, and it's still breathing, soft, shallow, like it's dreaming. Some say the butter holds memories, that if you eat it, which no one has, you'll remember things that never happened to you. A feast in a castle, a war you didn't fight in, a very intense argument about spoons. Historians call it nonsense. But historians weren't here the day the ground cracked around the jar. You stand slowly, the wind shifts. You swear the jar pulses, just once, like a heart thinking about something. You leave it where it is. That seems safest. And you walk away whispering thank you, not to anyone in particular, just in case the butter was listening. The smell hits you before you see her, sharp, tangy, almost medicinal. You wrinkle your nose knows instinctively and immediately feel guilty because this is her process, and some processes are not meant to be judged. You're standing in the back garden of a crooked little house near the creek. Smoke rises from a lopsided chimney. Over the doorway hangs a bundle of dried lavender, a horseshoe, and, because why not, 3 garlic bulbs braided into a warning. Inside, the woman is hard at work. Her name is Temperance Lyle. She's known for 2 things, never smiling and washing her cilantro in warm apple cider vinegar. You ease the door open. She doesn't look up. The air inside is thick with herbs and scolding. There's a pot on the stove, bubbling like it's rehearsing for something more dramatic. And on the table, a large bowl of freshly picked cilantro, soaking in a golden bath that smells like autumn had a panic attack. She stirs it slowly, carefully, reverently. You whisper a greeting. She grunts in response. That's a warm welcome by her standards. Temperance believes, knows that raw cilantro is unholy, that to eat it unwashed or worse dry is to invite chaos into the mouth. So she washes it, not with water, no, with vinegar. And not just any vinegar. It must be cider-based, homemade, fermented under a waxing moon, and blessed with at least one sigh of frustration during the brewing. You watch her strain the leaves through a cloth that looks suspiciously like a piece of someone's old petticoat. She presses the herbs gently, almost lovingly, between 2 wooden boards, then lays them out on a tray to dry. She turns to you and says, open quote, now it can be eaten. It has confessed. Close quote. You nod, because what else can you do? She hands you a sample, just a single leaf. You chew slowly. It's bright, clean, still cilantro, but calmer, less arrogant. You imagine this is what soap would taste like if it apologized first. Temperance sits and begins writing in a thick, leather-bound notebook titled The Leaf's Redemption. You glance over her shoulder and see her latest entry. Open quote, cilantro, once wild, now penitent. Washed with cider, it speaks softly, almost like parsley, but with ambition. Close quote. You try not to laugh. She would not approve. Some say Temperance once ate a full sprig of unwashed cilantro during a county dinner and didn't sleep for 3 days. Others believe she was cursed by a mislabeled salad. Either way, her mission is clear. Cleanse the herb, or burn it. Her kitchen is full of glass jars, some labeled, some not. One simply says, never again. You don't ask. Historians largely ignore her contribution to culinary history, dismissing her as a fringe figure with unverifiable practices. But the locals, they swear her vinegar wash changed the way cilantro was accepted in this town. Some even claim it helped convert the skeptics. You step outside, leaf still tingling on your tongue. The air is cooler now and you feel something shift in your taste buds. Not quite love, but tolerance. And you start to wonder if some things are only hard to swallow because we never thought to rinse them first. The chapel bell tolls again. Not for worship this time, but for a wedding. You follow the sound down the cobbled path past clusters of villagers, balancing gifts wrapped in muslin and suspiciously moist pies. The scent of rose water, yeast, and unspoken family drama hangs in the air. It's the wedding of Ruth Abner and Thomas Pindle, 2 people universally described as nice enough, surprisingly punctual. You've been invited as a guest. Or perhaps as a witness. Or maybe because you're the only one who knows what happened to the butter. You arrive at the reception just as the feast is unveiled. There's bread, roasted roots, cider, and of course the ceremonial butter. The largest, richest, most carefully churned pat the town has produced all year. Shaped like a dove, or possibly a fish. The details are blurred by the humidity. It rests proudly on a silver platter, flecked with herbs, glowing like a sun made of dairy. Someone plays a flute, children clap, a toast is made, glasses are raised, and then it happens. A scream, a gasp, a crash of crockery. The butter is gone, vanished, stolen, absconded with. The platter is empty, save for a faint smear and what appears to be a single, mocking breadcrumb. Panic sets in. Someone faints. Someone else accuses the neighboring village. A woman claims she saw a blur, possibly shaped like a man, possibly shaped like a goat, dart past the cake table. The groom stands frozen, his hand still midair where he was going to slice a piece of bread and make his first official married spread. He looks betrayed. Butter was supposed to bind this union. You join the search party. Behind the chapel, in the shade of the old oak tree, you spot something, faint footprints in the mud, and a trail of oily smudges leading toward the barn. You follow the trail, carefully, quietly. Inside the barn, light filters through cracked slats. It smells of hay, sawdust, and butter. The trail leads to a corner where, nestled behind a barrel of lentils, you find a small plate, licked clean, and beside it a single, smug-looking squirrel. It freezes when it sees you. You freeze too. The moment stretches. Then in a flash of fur and insolence, the squirrel disappears through a knothole, vanishing into the underbrush with the confidence of a creature that has just devoured an entire wedding's worth of prestige. You bring back the plate. You say nothing of the squirrel. The villagers never discover the truth. Rumors take root instead. Some say the butter simply evaporated due to excessive holiness. Others believe it was a divine test. A few suspect it ran off with the pickled beets. The bride, surprisingly, laughs. "We still have bread," she says, "and I always preferred vinegar." The guests cheer because they don't know what else to do. Someone improvises a wedding jig. Later, you spot a replacement pat of butter on the table. Smaller, humbler, less sculpted. A peace offering. It melts fast, as if too shy to stay solid. Historians mention this wedding only in footnotes. One calls it the ceremony of the vanishing fat. Another insists the loss of butter caused the couple to later argue about wallpaper. But you were there, and you can never look at a squirrel the same way again. The town square is unusually quiet this morning. Too quiet. Even the pigeons seem nervous. You feel it before you hear it, a kind of tension in the air, like the trees are holding their breath. Something's about to happen, or rather, something already has. You reach the community hall just as the doors creak open, and a tired-looking clerk pins a sheet of parchment to the notice board with a crooked nail. The ink is still drying. Open quote, emergency vote. On the continued presence of cilantro, is it leaf or is it thread? The people shall decide. Close quote. You blink. The man next to you mutters, "About time," then trips on his own indignation and disappears into the bakery. It's official now. The town is voting on whether cilantro should be banned. Not just regulated, not avoided at church potlucks, banned. You sit down on the edge of a barrel and watch as people file in to cast their votes. The process is theatrical, dramatic, slightly greasy. Each person is handed a piece of paper with a single question. Open quote. Should cilantro be grown, sold, or served within the village borders? 2 boxes. Yes, no, close quote. And a third option, scrawled in smaller handwriting. Open quote. I don't know. I'm scared. Close quote. You recognize some of the voters. Mrs. Lunsford, who once accused her neighbor's stew of witchcraft-level freshness. She checks no without hesitation. Old Tobias, who eats leaves off trees when no one's watching, checks yes with suspicious glee. Then there's young Maisie, holding the hand of her grandfather, who just stares at the form for a long time before writing the word maybe in the margin and dropping it in the box anyway. You're handed a ballot. You hesitate. You remember the Cilantro Burst Festival, the cider vinegar rinse, the stolen garden, the whispering jar, the butter. Always the butter. You draw a small, smiley face in the corner of your ballot, not out of mockery, but out of confusion. It's hard to take a stand when the issue is an herb that tastes like soap to half the population and sunshine to the other. By noon, the results are tallied. The town gathers. The clerk clears his throat. Open quote, the vote stands at 23 yes, 21 no, and 15 ballots that just say, "Why are we doing this?" Close quote. There's silence. Then someone starts clapping, slowly, awkwardly. Then a few others join in. A horse sneezes. A baby yells something about carrots. The mayor, or again the self-appointed magistrate, steps up and says, open quote, cilantro will be permitted with discretion. It must be labeled. It must be consensual, and it must never appear in pudding. Close quote. The crowd disperses, murmuring, some in relief, some in anger, a few in confusion. Still unclear whether cilantro is a vegetable or a vibe. You linger at the notice board. Someone's already graffitied the parchment. Open quote, lettuce be. Close quote. Historians gloss over the cilantro referendum, perhaps embarrassed by how emotional it all got, over something you can grow in a teacup. But for the townspeople, it was a turning point, a moment when food stopped being food and became something else. You walk away slowly, the scent of herbs clinging faintly to your sleeves. And you're starting to understand that some flavors don't just divide taste buds, they divide history. You hear the shouting before you see the crowd. Dozens of villagers gathered near the granary, half of them waving spoons, the other half holding sticks of butter protest, but a very colonial one. You step closer, trying not to make eye contact with the man covered in breadcrumbs. At the center of the argument is a wooden crate, and atop that crate stands a boy named Wendell, 12 years old, eyeglasses smudged, voice cracking, holding what appears to be a yardstick smeared with butter. He clears his throat, open quote, ladies, gentlemen, and undecided parties, I present to you the new standard of measurement, the butter brick, close quote. Someone groans, someone else drops a spoon in horror. You blink. Wendell, unfazed, continues, open quote, we can no longer rely on vague terms like a pat or a dollop. These are lawless words, unfit for trade. Today, we quantify. Close quote. He points to a slab of hardened butter next to him, carved into a neat rectangle and marked with precise notches. Open quote. 1 butter brick equals 3 tablespoons. 4 bricks make a quarter slab. 2 quarter slabs equal a spread unit. It's simple math. Close quote is, of course, not simple. The baker throws up his hands. My mother measured by instinct and taste. She never once used a spread unit. The fishmonger counters, you can't bake a treaty. I want butter that makes sense. A chicken wanders through the debate, pecks at the brick, then walks away unimpressed. You approach the display and inspect the prototype. It's sturdy, a bit too cold. Feels oddly authoritative in your hand, like if you dropped it, it might file a complaint. Someone in the crowd suggests using teaspoons instead. Wendell gasps, open quote, teaspoons are a tool of chaos. Look at them. Curved, inconsistent, wildly varied. I saw one shaped like a tulip yesterday. A tulip, close quote. You find a sheet of parchment with his proposed conversions. 1 butter brick pulls 3 tablespoons, 2 bricks, 1 spreader, 6 spreaders, 1 feast factor, 8 feast factors, 1 civic unit. At some point, the system loops back into absurdity, but no one can stop him. His argument is passionate, slightly sweaty, surprisingly convincing. By sundown, the village is split. Some begin using butter bricks exclusively. Others refuse to acknowledge their existence. A few just go home and eat dry bread in protest. You watch as Wendell carves another block. He turns to you, hopeful. Open quote, don't you think butter should be respected, that it should be measured with meaning? Close quote. You nod slowly, not because you agree, but because he's already started designing a flag. Historians remember the event only as a footnote. Local youth proposes butter-based metric system. Laughed at and mysteriously adopted by 2 bakeries and 1 sheep co-op. You turn to leave as the first butter brick exchange board is nailed to a post. The crowd is thinned. A few people are testing the bricks for density and bounce. And you walk away holding a small sample brick in your pocket, unsure whether you're supporting innovation or just collecting another very soft paperweight. Evening descends with a hush, the sky bruised purple and soft orange like a tired eyelid half closed over the village. You're walking near the edge of town now where fences lean and grass dares to grow wildly. You didn't plan to come here. Your feet just took you. You find yourself at the back of the old food cellar, a squat sunken building made of stone with a door that creaks before you touch it. It smells like earth and slow decay. The kind of place where apples forget they were ever round. Inside, it's cool and quiet. Your breath fogs slightly. Somewhere in the dark, something drips. It's the kind of quiet that rearranges your thoughts without asking. You sit on an overturned crate, unsure why. Then, without warning, you doze off. And that's when you dream. It starts gently. You're floating. No, drifting above the fields, over the root cellars and churn barns, your body light as flour. Below, the land is green, but not the green of parsley or fresh grass. It's the vivid, complicated green of cilantro. Fields of it, endless, shimmering, moving in the breeze like it's breathing. You try to speak, but your voice comes out leafy. You taste lemon and something else. Soap, no, memory. The cilantro begins whispering. Dozens of tiny voices, high-pitched and curious. Open quote. You judged us, you chewed without knowing. We are not flavor, we are history. Tell the butter it was never alone. Close quote. You float lower, the fields rise to meet you, the leaves curl upward, brushing your fingertips soft and oddly warm. You feel the weight of 1,000 dinners of family arguments about freshness and aftertaste. You see your ancestors grimacing politely at a potluck. You hear a fork scrape a plate. And then, the leaves part. In the center of the field is a large table, set for 1. A slice of bread sits on a plate, slathered with butter and topped with a perfect cilantro leaf. It gleams, you hesitate, you take a bite, and suddenly the dream shifts. You're back in your own mouth, your own tongue, but the flavor is different. Not bad, not brilliant, just familiar. The butter smooth, the cilantro bold, the pairing oddly balanced, as if two rivals have agreed to be neutral in your presence. You wake, it's darker now. The cellar smells the same, but feels changed, like it remembers your dream too. You find a single cilantro leaf on the floor beside you. It's real, glossy, fresh, impossible. Some historians would scoff at this, chalk it up to food cellar hallucination or bad cider. Others might nod solemnly and say, yes, the leaves do whisper sometimes. You step outside, leaf still in hand. The wind brushes your cheek like a green sigh. Then you don't tell anyone. Not because they wouldn't believe you, but because it wasn't really about belief. It was about finally listening. The sun rises soft and sticky, like warm jam on the edge of a dull blade. The village is waking up, groaning in chairs, stretching in aprons. Somewhere a dog sneezes into a bucket. And you're headed to the apothecary, not for medicine, but for a rumor. You push open the door and step into a space that smells like old time, regret, and faint disappointment. Jars line the walls, filled with powders and liquids, roots and barks, and at least one jar labeled whatever works. Behind the counter is Dr. Bellamy, a tall man who looks like he hasn't slept since the last eclipse. He's wearing 3 scarves and no shoes. You clear your throat. I heard you treated a bee sting with butter. He pauses, slowly lowers his mortar and pestle, squints at you like you've just asked if you worship soup. Open quote. That was an experiment, he says. A bold, irresponsible experiment. Close quote. He gestures for you to follow him into the back room. It smells stronger here. More vinegar, more herbs, more audacity. Laid out on the table is his journal, written in the tight, urgent scrawl of a man afraid someone might read it too slowly. Open quote. Patient, Albert. Incident, stung by bee. Reaction, loud, emotional, possibly exaggerated. Close quote from the page. Open quote. Applied standard salve, no improvement. In moment of desperation and lack of calendula, applied small smear of salted butter. Close quote. You raise your eyebrows. Bellamy nods solemnly. Open quote. It worked. Possibly. Maybe. Close quote. He explains further. The butter was chilled, spread thinly. The salt content reduced swelling, or maybe the patient simply liked butter and calmed down. Either way, within minutes, the redness faded, the pain dulled. Albert began humming a song about goats. You ask if it's a fluke. Bellamy shrugs, pulls down a second jar labeled emergency butter for external use only. Open quote. I've used it 3 more times, he whispers. Stings, burns. Once on a child with emotional disappointment. Seemed to help. Close quote. He leans in. Open quote. But the butter must be fresh, churned within a day, and never mixed with garlic. Garlic makes the swelling worse. The footnote of failure is clear. Close quote. You glance around the room. Beside the herbs, jars of butter sit among poultices and powders. Most are labeled with disclaimers like hopeful, possibly medicinal, and might be yogurt. Bellamy hands you a tiny tin. Open quote. Just in case, you'll know when. Close quote. You pocket it carefully. The cool metal warm against your fingers. Historians would never call this medicine. Butter is for toast, they'd say. Butter is not an elixir, but they weren't there. They didn't see Albert cry tears of gratitude. Then lick his forearm. You step out into the sunlight, the tin heavy with the weight of folklore and dairy. And you start to believe that healing isn't always about science. Sometimes it's just about comfort and a little salt. It's well past dark when the trouble begins. You're halfway through a piece of dry gingerbread, leaning against the cool stone wall behind the bakery, when a boy runs past, shouting something about herbs in the wall again. You blink, take another bite, follow. The jail isn't really a jail. It's a converted goat shed with a rusty latch and a sign that says temporary holding, no digging. It hasn't been used in months, maybe years. But tonight, it's lit by lanterns, and outside stands a crowd murmuring with the hungry tone of people who just want something weird to talk about. You push through just in time to see the constable swing the door open. And there, in the far corner of the cell, pushing bravely up through a crack in the stone floor, is a cilantro plant. Small, green, slightly defiant. Someone gasps, someone else crosses themselves. A third person says, "Not again." You step closer, crouch beside the plant. It's perfect. Bright leaves, full stems. The smell is strong, too strong for one sprig. It smells like a whole salad that knows it doesn't belong. The constable sighs and points to the wall. Open quote, that's the fourth time it's come up in here. We dig it out, it comes back. We paved that floor 3 months ago. Close quote. You touch the crack. It's warm, just faintly. Someone suggests the herb is protesting. Another insists it's just a stubborn weed. A third believes it's the ghost of that poet from the verse festival. You're not entirely sure he's wrong. A local priest is called. He arrives with a small flask of holy water and a strong opinion about seasoning. He sprinkles, mumbles, and leaves. The plant remains. You ask if it could be connected to the garden disappearance, the squirrel incident, the jar, the dream. Everyone tells you not to talk like that in public. Eventually the crowd disperses. The constable, exhausted, shrugs. Open quote, it's not hurting anyone. We'll let it grow, for now. Close quote. The door is left ajar. Later, under lantern light, you come back, alone. You sit beside the plant, quietly. Its scent wraps around you, herbal, sharp, ancient. You think you hear something in the walls. Maybe rats, maybe wind, maybe a leaf humming. You find a note in your pocket from earlier, the one from the apothecary. You scribble something on the back. Open quote, it wants to be seen, even here. Close quote, you place it beside the sprig and leave it there like an offering. Some historians won't even acknowledge this event. Others call it the cellar reclamation, an act of subtle botanical rebellion. A few say the plant was just a prank by bored teenagers with dirt in their pockets, but you saw it, you smelled it, and you start to understand that cilantro doesn't ask for permission. It arrives, even behind locked doors, even in the dark. The first snowfall comes earlier than anyone expected. It drifts down slow and thick, like flour spilled by a distracted baker. Everything is muted. The chickens stop pacing. The horses look offended. And you're trudging through ankle-deep slush toward the edge of the mill pond because someone yelled, "The butter's on fire." Not metaphorically, you round the corner of the storage shed and see it. The lard house, normally a quiet, stuck, unremarkable building used to cure fat, wax rags, and store backup butter, now has smoke curling from the chimney in a distinctly panicked way. You push the door open. Inside, the air is thick with smoke, steam, and a very aggressive smell of scorched dairy. The lard housekeeper, a man known only as Peabody, first name unknown, possibly non-existent, is frantically waving a cloth over what used to be a butter safe. The walls are slick with sweat and failure. A log in the corner is gently smoldering, so is the emergency butter barrel. You blink through the haze. What happened? Peabody doesn't look up. Open quote, they stacked the bricks too close to the hearth, thought the cold would balance it. Physics disagreed. Close quote, you glance around. There are puddles everywhere. Yellow, greasy, tragic puddles. A whole season's worth of winter butter, meant for stews, crusts, medicinal compresses, now melted into chaos. In the center of the room is a large wooden rack with the remains of what once was the reserve pad. It had a name, it had a label, it had plans, and now it's dripping down the slats like dairy despair. Someone opens a window to let the smoke out. It only lets in snow. You all stand there, blinking in silence, listening to the hiss of winter air hitting hot butter. It sounds like regret. Peabody finally sighs. Open quote, I saved one stick, just one. It was in my pocket. Close quote, he pulls it out reverently. It's misshapen, slightly damp, still heroic. A woman nearby takes it gently and wraps it in a clean cloth. Open quote, we'll use it for something ceremonial. Close quote, they all nod. By evening, the fire is out, the butter is gone. The lard house smells like someone tried to deep fry a ghost. A small plaque is nailed above the door. Open quote, here fell the winter butter. May spring churn again. Close quote, some villagers say it was sabotage, others blame a shift in humidity. One person insists the butter was depressed and did it on purpose. No one listens to him. Historians record it simply as the lard house incident with a short note. Open quote, all that melts is not lost, but sometimes it is. Close quote. You walk back home, coat heavy with smoke and the faint cling of scorched milk fat, and you start to wonder if some things weren't meant to last, just meant to melt beautifully, and remind you how precious spreadability really is. The morning is sharp, crisp, the kind of air that feels like it's scalding your lungs just for breathing it. You wrap your shawl tighter and follow the sound of raised voices toward the center of the village, where a crowd is gathered around the stone circle. At the heart of it, two families, the Willoughbys and the Cranstons. You know them. Everyone knows them. They fought over land, over goats, over who built the Bitterroot cellar. But today they are fighting over butter, specifically whether cilantro belongs on it. You step closer. A folding table stands between them, covered in slices of brown bread, 2 tubs of churned butter, and a small, sad pile of wilted herbs that may or may not have been washed properly. Mrs. Cranston, cheeks pink with cold and fury, raises a finger. Open quote, the butter is a base, a wholly neutral canvas. You don't smear controversy across it. Close quote, across from her by old Thomas Willoughby, huffs into his beard. Open quote, it enhances, brightens, makes it pop. You're just afraid of flavor. Close quote, someone gasps. The baker mutters, not again. The young man steps forward holding a butter knife like it's a judge's gavel. Open quote, proposal. Each family prepares one version the crowd tastes. We vote. Close quote, the families reluctantly agree. Bread is sliced, butter is spread. One side remains pure, pale, and proud. The other is dotted with tiny green flecks, defiant and fragrant. Slices are passed through the crowd. You're handed both. You bite the Cranston slice first. Simple, traditional, comfortingly bland, like being hugged by a pillow that never wants to surprise you. Then you try the Willoughby slice. It's bold, unexpected. The cilantro leaps, the butter cushions. It tastes like mischief at a picnic. The murmurs begin. Woman whispers, I hate that I liked it. The man says, I didn't even taste the green, just sparkle. And then from the back of the crowd, a small voice, open quote, can we have both? Close quote, everyone turns. It's little Elsie Brewster, aged 7, holding both slices with the perfect logic of someone who's too young to care about family feuds and just wants lunch. The silence lingers, then slowly someone laughs. A cautious, guilty kind of laugh. Another joins in. Then more. And then, ridiculously, almost dramatically, the two matriarchs begin spreading each other's butter. You blink. A slice is offered to you with both styles on one piece of bread. You try it, and you realize something horrifying. It's really good. The bitterness and brightness of the cilantro fold into the creaminess. It doesn't clash. It dances, like two neighbors finally deciding to borrow sugar instead of throwing it. By the end of the hour, someone's already dubbed it the compromise spread. A recipe is being written. Butter knives are being shared. A new tradition is born. Some historians argue this truce was inevitable. Others say it only lasted 2 winters before they started fighting about marmalade. But this moment, it's recorded on a stained napkin pressed between recipe books and passed down as, open quote, the day the butter chose peace, close quote. And you walk away chewing quietly, tasting diplomacy, and wondering why we ever thought flavor had to pick a side. You're up before the sun today, roused by a smell you can't quite place. Warm, greasy, oddly holy. It clings to the morning air like a hymn made of toast. You follow it instinctively across the frost-silvered path and up toward the small hill that leads to the chapel. The door is ajar. You step inside and immediately it hits you. Butter. But not just any butter. This butter is everywhere. It's been smeared across the wooden pews, dabbed along the window frames, melted intentionally onto the brass hinges of the pulpit door. It glistens faintly in the flickering candlelight, catching the beams like it's trying to perform. A woman nearby kneels in the aisle, gently polishing the altar rail with what appears to be a cloth and a stick of butter. She doesn't notice you. Or maybe she does and has decided you're not important enough to stop her ritual. You step carefully toward the pulpit, trying not to slip on the slick floorboards. A note is pinned there, carefully hand-lettered, smudged with something pale yellow. Open quote, blessed by butter, for thou art soft. We anoint with salt and cream, which squeaks shall be silenced, that which sticks shall glide. Close quote. You blink, once, twice, no, it doesn't go away. The buttering began 3 nights ago, according to the notes in the chapel ledger. It started with the organ bench, then the doorknobs, then the hymnals. Someone called it a joke. Someone else called it an offering. No one stopped it. The congregation has divided. Half believe it's a blasphemy. The other half, well, they've never sat more comfortably in their lives. You take a seat in the last pew. It sighs under you, soft, warm, smooth as memory. You close your eyes for a moment, unsure whether you're meditating or being slowly basted. An old man walks past with a small basket and a brush. He's humming, dipping the brush in a dish of softened butter, touching up the hymn board. Open quote, keeps the wood from cracking, he says quietly, and the heart too, if you let it. Close quote, you say nothing. You don't need to. In the corner, someone has carved a new verse into the frame of the stained glass window. Open quote, yea, though I walk through the valley of dry toast, I shall fear no blandness. Close quote. You step outside just as the bell begins to ring, slow, almost cuckoo-y, somehow. Later that day, the town debates whether to halt the practice. The reverend says it's gone too far. The carpenter says the pews have never been smoother. The choir director demands they stop buttering the hymnals because the altos keep dropping them. A vote is planned, nothing is resolved. Historians don't acknowledge this period. Perhaps they feared losing credibility. But in certain margins of private journals, you can still find references to the season of anointment. You walk home with the scent of butter still in your sleeves, and you begin to suspect that comfort, true comfort, might come not from conviction, but from something soft, slightly salted, and spread quietly across the surfaces we hold dear. The snow has melted, but the ground is still hard, the kind of cold that lingers out of spite. You're trudging past the edge of town toward the stone fence that never quite keeps anything in or out when you notice something strange near the abandoned herb beds. Green. You blink, rub your eyes, blink again. There, poking up through the frozen soil like a leafy little act of defiance, is a single sprig of cilantro. Still alive, still green, still smug. You kneel beside it, the others are gone. Choked by frost, devoured by goats, cursed by poets. But this one, it has survived. Not only that, it's thriving. Its stem is thick, its leaves are lush. It radiates the quiet confidence of a plant that has outlived the gossip. You glance around, there's no one watching. You lean in and whisper. Open quote, close quote. The cilantro says nothing because of course it doesn't. But the wind rustles just enough for you to feel like maybe it heard you. You inspect the ground. There's a stone nearby, curved like a small bowl. Just under it, moisture, trapped warmth. It's created a pocket of survival. A cozy corner of accidental gardening genius, or fate. You hear footsteps behind you. It's old Mags, wrapped in 3 scarves and a blanket that looks like it was once a curtain. She leans on her cane and peers down at the plant. Open quote. That's the one, then. Close quote. You ask what she means. She smiles a little sideways. Open quote. I told it to wait. I told it to sleep through the noise and rise when the cold was tired. Close quote. You pause. Blink again. Open quote. You told it. She shrugs. Open quote. Some leaves listen. Most people don't. Close quote. She kneels slower than you did, brushing the dirt gently from the plant's base. Open quote. My mother used to say if you treat something like it'll last, it might just believe you. Close quote. You sit with her a while, watch the wind flick the tiny green leaves, defiant against the late frost. Later, someone tries to dig it up and transplant it to the chapel garden. It dies within hours. The soil there was too proud, too visible. But here, in the edge of forgotten space, it returns. Every spring. Some villagers call it the stubborn sprig. Others say it's a miracle. One man believes it's a punishment for not returning a borrowed butter dish. Historians miss this entirely. But on a quiet corner of the old stone fence, someone's carved a tiny phrase. Open quote. Not all roots sleep forever. Close quote. And you start to wonder how many things left alone but not unloved might be quietly waiting for their moment to come back. The war came quietly, as wars often do in towns where people are too tired to raise swords but still very particular about food storage. It wasn't a war of weapons. No one marched, no drums. Just a rising tension that fermented slowly in the corners of people's mouths. You arrive at the scene of the conflict, a low, squat building on the edge of the village commons, nestled between the wheelwright's shop and a rarely used gazebo. Inside, the butter reserves, or what remains of them. This place was sacred, in its way, a community effort. Neatly stacked crocks labeled with initials and seasons. ES, Spring 84. Town Share, Autumn 85. Cranston Emergency Slab, Do Not Touch. Each crock sealed with wax, each with its own story. But now, half the shelves are empty, a few broken lids, a trail of crackers leading toward the rear entrance. Someone has stolen the community butter. The town is furious. You meet with the Council of Condiments. Yes, that's what they call themselves, even though everyone hates it. They sit in a half circle in the bakery's back room, wearing mismatched shawls and tight-lipped suspicion. Martha Cranston slams a stick of emergency butter on the table like it's evidence. Open quote, this was all I had left. One stick. For 3 people, we had to ration on Sunday toast, close quote. Across from her, Enoch Willoughby snorts. Open quote, maybe if your kin hadn't overlabeled everything like it was royal cheese, no one would have wanted to steal it. Close quote. A gasp, possibly from you. Tensions escalate, accusations are whispered, a few are shouted. A young apprentice swears he saw a glass jar with claw marks behind the mill. Someone else claims a masked figure with toast-shaped pockets was seen at midnight. No one knows for sure, but everyone has an enemy. The town begins to divide. Team salted versus team unsalted, preservers versus spreaders. Even the children pick sides, scribbling butter belongs to all on alley walls while hoarding crackers and tree stumps. You try to mediate, suggest sharing. Maybe smaller crocks. Temporary melting stations. You are ignored. Someone calls you a texture apologist. Then one day, a child arrives filthy, proud, holding a small dented pewter cup. Inside it, a scoop of the missing butter flecked with parsley. It smells faintly of smoke and apology. The crowd gathers. Open quote, I found it, the child says, in the hollow behind the lard house, wrapped in a prayer cloth. It wasn't taken, it was hidden to keep it safe, close quote. Everyone turns to look at each other. Faces go pale. There's a silence that feels like 1,000 mouths trying to reset. Because suddenly, no one remembers who started the rumor, or why they assumed theft, or how they let an argument about butter nearly end friendships older than the chapel roof. Martha walks up, takes the butter gently, and says, open quote, maybe we share this with toast and shut up. Close quote, Todd, no one objects. Later, you sit on a bench in the square, buttered roll in hand, watching children feed crumbs to birds that seem suspiciously well-fed already. Historians footnote this incident under the Great Preservation Panic. A few call it mass hysteria, others just call it Wednesday. And you understand now that nothing melts like trust, and sometimes the only way to restore peace is with a knife, a crust of bread, and one clean, quiet scoop. The lanterns have been strung between fence posts, flickering slightly in the early evening breeze. A banner painted in someone's best attempted cursive flaps lazily across the square. Open quote, welcome to the first annual Cilantro Sculpture Festival. Attendance strongly encouraged. Participation inevitable. Close quote. You blink at it. Surely this was a dare that got out of hand. And yet here you are. Here everyone is. The square is full. Tables line the perimeter. Each one crowded with people hunched over bowls of what appears to be, yes, definitely, cold butter. And beside each bowl, a pile of freshly rinsed cilantro, some sprigs still damp, some wilting from panic. A woman hands you a clipboard. Open quote, judging are you? We're short on dignified eyes. Close quote. You nod slowly, unsure how to feel dignified, while watching someone shape a leaf into what vaguely resembles a goose wearing a bonnet. You approach the first table. It's Milo, the butter enthusiast from the supper spread catastrophe. He's back. Older now, wiser, possibly humbler. His sculpture is titled, open quote, Reconciliation and Fat Relief, close quote. It's abstract, soft mounds of butter shaped into 2 hands reaching toward one another with cilantro leaves trailing between the fingers like apologies. You write something generous on your clipboard. He nods solemnly, as if he's invented a new kind of forgiveness. Next table, twins. Likely 8 years old, possibly chaotic neutral. Their sculpture is to be a butter catapult aimed at a cilantro bush. You raise an eyebrow. Oh. Open quote, it's called Herb War. One says proudly. It launches up to 3 pats a minute. The other adds. You mark energetic, slightly threatening, impressive mechanics. Close quote. Further down, you find a very serious old man sculpting a bust of himself entirely in butter, with cilantro used for eyebrows and a smug little cravat. Open quote. Entitled My Legacy in Dairy, he says. You're right. Absolutely haunting. Unforgettable. Close quote. Across the square, a quiet young woman presents her piece last. A single scoop of butter, smooth, simple, centered on a small slate tile. Around it, a perfect ring of cilantro leaves, each aligned like little green prayers. No title. You look at her. She shrugs. Open quote. Sometimes they belong together. Sometimes they don't. This time I didn't force it. Close quote. You stare at it longer than the others. At sunset, judging begins. You stand before the crowd and give a speech you didn't prepare. You say words like texture, vision, and structural integrity. You try not to say melty mess out loud. A ribbon is awarded, not for best sculpture, but for emotional depth and daring. It goes to the young woman. She accepts it like it's too heavy, even though it weighs nothing. By nightfall, the tables are being cleared. Most sculptures are gone, eaten, smeared on rolls. A few children are visibly butter drunk and have cilantro in their hair. Someone finds a sprig behind the chapel bell and declares it a sign. Someone else says it's just a leaf. And someone else whispers, isn't that enough? Historians don't record the sculpture festival. It's too strange, too fleeting, too covered in fingerprints and crumbs. But the people remember. They tell the story with gestures, with laughter, with the smell of herbs still caught in their sleeves. And you walk home quietly, buttery handprint on your coat, wondering if maybe art never needed to be permanent, just shared before it melted. You're woken by a letter, not the kind that slipped gently under a door, but one that's shoved through the crack in your window with the urgency of a raccoon delivering a subpoena. The envelope smells faintly of nutmeg. The handwriting is agitated. Open quote, urgent, you must come. He's writing letters again. In butter. A friend. Close quote. You groan, roll out of bed, and head straight for the edge of town, where the manor sits. Not the grand kind of manor, but the once belonged to a man who claimed to invent salt kind. The door is open, just barely. Inside, the parlor smells like milk left in an argument. You find him in the study. Ezekiel Harlow, poet, hermit, amateur diplomat. You'd forgotten about him. Most had. The last time anyone saw him, he was arguing with a wheel of cheese about regional accents. He sits hunched over a large oak desk, parchment everywhere, lit candles, half melted, and in his hand, a small buttered quill, not dipped in ink, no, dipped in butter, salted, lightly whipped. Open quote, it glides better. He murmurs, not looking up. The words come smoother, truth tastes richer. Close quote, you peer over his shoulder, he's writing a letter to a biscuit, like an actual biscuit. Open quote, my dearest crumb, you arrive fractured, yet brave. May we spread between us a truce smear, a prayer. Close quote, you inhale slowly, nod, sit. He turns to you. Open quote, I've been writing to pastries, to bread, to cutlery, but it's not working. Something's wrong with the flavor of communication. Close quote, you ask him what he means. He leans in. Open quote, ink is sharp. Bitter, it's for arguments, but butter listens. Close quote, you look around. Letters lie open like petals. One to a spoon, one to a tea cake, one surprisingly lengthy to a cilantro stem, written entirely in herb-infused ghee. You ask him why no one's heard from him in months. He smiles, slow and dreamy. Open quote, because butter doesn't rush, butter waits. Close quote, you sit in silence for a while, reading fragments. Dear Rye Toast, thank you for holding me. Dear Muffin, sorry for what I said when I was cold. Dear Leaf, I feared you. Now I fold you in. There's a tenderness here, a quiet kind of madness, or maybe a brilliance no one else has time for. He hands you a parchment, blank, offers the quill. You hesitate, then dip. Right, open quote, dear morning, please stay a little longer. Close quote, he nods, smiles. You leave him with a pot of freshly softened butter and a new sheet. Outside, the sun has risen just enough to make the frost glitter. Historians ignore Ezekiel entirely. One refers to him as possibly fictional, but in a dusty drawer of the village archive, there's a preserved page. Open quote, to those who listen with their tongue, let butter speak, let bread answer. Close quote. And you walk home with the butter-smudged letter in your pocket and the strange sudden urge to whisper something kind to your breakfast. It's just past noon when the strange chime begins. Not the chapel bell, not the schoolhouse triangle. This is softer, clinkier, like cutlery being moved by someone who doesn't want to get caught. You follow the sound across the village green, past the postmaster's cat, who's sprawled in the sun like he owns every rumor, and toward the watchmaker's shop, which has been closed for years, ever since all the clocks decided they were better off being furniture. You push open the creaking door. Dust stirs. It smells like metal, molasses, and time badly managed. Inside, rows of clocks. Some still tick, most don't, but in the center of the room, surrounded by springs and gears and something suspiciously sticky, is a small bronze clock that chimes once every time cilantro sprouts. You blink. You did not know that was possible. You look closer. Yes. There, etched in fading script on the back. Open quote, for each leaf that lives a talk shall sound. Close quote. You gently lift the bell casing. Inside the mechanism, instead of a pendulum, is a sprig of dried cilantro tied delicately with twine and connected to a tiny scale. The weight of moisture causes it to sway. A faint ding follows. This isn't a clock, it's a herb. Oracle. The timepiece speaks only in sprouting. You're interrupted by the sound of footsteps. It's the old watchmaker's apprentice, Jonah. White hair now, but the same nervous energy as always. He stares at you, eyes wide. Open quote. You heard it. Close quote. You nod. He exhales. Open quote. It hasn't chimed in 5 years. Not since the festival ended. Not since the gardens died back. I thought the roots were gone for good. Close quote. You ask where the clock came from. He tells you the story how the watchmaker built it for his wife, who couldn't keep cilantro alive but loved it anyway. He made the clock to chime for hope, for each new attempt, each green return. Open quote. It's tuned to freshness, Jonah whispers. Only rings when something grows with intention. Not just by accident, not just because. Close quote. You both fall silent as it ticks again. Ding. He opens the drawer below the clock. Inside, a logbook. Neat columns of dates. Each time the clock chimed. Scribbled notes beside them. July 8th. Sprout near the south fence. May 19th. Herb pot by the baker's stairs. October 2nd. The jail again. You run your fingers down the column. Today's date is already written. Open quote. Window box. North Chapel. Someone noticed. Someone planted. Something answered. Close quote. You smile quietly. Jonah closes the book, his hands trembling a bit. Open quote. Do we tell them? He asks that it's growing again. Close quote. You consider, then nod. Open quote. But let's wait. Let it grow a little first. Close quote. You step out into the bright, humming afternoon. Every ticking second now feels like a heartbeat you hadn't noticed before. Historians would call this anecdotal, allegorical nonsense. But in this town, for the first time in a long while, cilantro has time again. And you walk slower listening, because somewhere, quietly, another thing is coming. Dusk stretches long fingers across the village green, brushing rooftops and window panes in the amber hush that only comes when everyone is finally tired enough to stop talking about butter. For now, anyway. You're walking toward the old well, the one that hasn't drawn water in years, but still draws stories. Tonight, someone has gathered chairs around it. Someone has lit candles. Someone has placed a small wooden tray at its edge with a single slice of bread carefully buttered and crowned with one perfect cilantro leaf. It's called the peace slice. You sit quietly. Others are already there. No one speaks. Not yet. A woman passes around cups of warm broth. A child hums something tuneless and sleepy. The air is thick with settlement, not just of dust and temperature, but of opinions. Heavy ones softened now by time and mutual snack fatigue. Then the storyteller rises. It's Ezra, the carpenter. Wrinkled, steady, smells like cedar and reluctant leadership. He clears his throat and begins. Open quote. Years ago we fought about bread, then butter, then herbs, then whether a butter brick should bounce. A few people chuckle softly. We had feasts and trials. We put plants in prison. We debated texture like it was law. Close quote. He pauses, lifts the peace slice gently. Open quote. But here's the thing about food. You eat it and then it's gone. The flavors stay only in memory, so maybe that's what we should argue over less. Close quote. He takes a bite. Everyone exhales like they were waiting for permission. And slowly, one by one, people bring forward their own slices. Some plain, some wild. One's got pickled onions and someone hisses, but no one stops them. You watch a woman crumble a bit of the peace slice into her pocket for later. And you smile, because that's exactly what peace looks like here. No parades, no declarations, just quiet bites, shared benches, and the occasional apologies smeared in butter. Someone starts a song, no lyrics, just a soft hum with a rhythm like breathing. You don't know the tune, but your feet tap along like they remembered from before. A candle flickers, the bread tray is now empty except for a few crumbs. A breeze lifts one, it dances in the air, then disappears. Later, as chairs are folded and candles pinched, you linger at the well. You peer down into the darkness. Listen. No echo, no voice, just the gentle scent of green. Historians will never mention tonight. There's nothing dramatic to record. No boat, no discovery. Just the taste of butter and leaf. walk home in silence, your fingers faintly greasy, your heart strangely full, not from the food, but from the stillness that follows when everyone is finally full enough. The morning arrives without urgency. Light spills in like warm broth, slow, golden, unbothered. You wake not from sound or smell, but from a sense that nothing else needs to happen. Not today. Your eyes stretch, feel your joints murmur gently in agreement. The world outside your window is soft-edged, dew clinging to fence posts, chimney smoke curling like lazy thoughts, and in the distance, the faintest scent of toasted bread drifting upward from the bakery. You walk slowly, no destination, just movement. Past the old well, past the now peaceful jail garden where the cilantro still grows, defiant and small. You run your fingers through its leaves without pulling any. It shivers politely. You keep walking. The lard house door is cracked. Inside, new barrels. Butter, fresh and humble, wrapped in cloth with no declarations or dramatic labels. Just initials, just enough. At the chapel, you pass a pew, still slick from its last anointment. Someone's added a note to the hymn book. Open quote. If found buttery, do not panic. It means you're still loved. Close quote. By the time you reach the edge of town, the sky has turned to pearl. The hill is empty, except for a bench, a new one, carved with leaves, worn just enough to feel familiar. You sit, and you remember everything. The whispered trial, the failed butter patch, the silent plant in the jail, the child's peace offering, the poetry, the pageantry, the arguments no one won, the flavors no one expected to love. You remember how strange it was, that all of it, all the noise and nuance grew from a smear of butter and a leaf most people didn't want. You remember how you changed, quietly, in bites, in laughs, in pauses between decisions. Down below in the village, someone is singing again. A child this time, off-key, confident. The tune is familiar like a lullaby written on toast. You let your eyes close, just for a moment. Let the wind slip through your fingers like ribbon. Let the stories fade into soft light. Let the green grow quietly in places no one expects. Let the butter melt slowly, not wasted, but welcomed. No more trials, no more votes. Just bread, just herbs, just you. And maybe if you listen closely enough, you'll hear a sprig whisper back. End of script. Sweet dreams.